Hi everyone, I'm Siobhan. I'm a housing solicitor at Vauxhall Law Centre and I'm also Young Legal Aid Lawyers Committee member. I've been leading Young Legal Aid Lawyers work on the SQA, the Solicitors Qualifying exam, for a number of years now. So I'm very excited to be chairing this particular event tonight. Tonight we want to officially launch our brand new scheme, the Social Welfare Solicitors Qualifying Fund, to you, our members, and to talk a bit about why and how we created the fund and how it will operate. So we've got with us this evening Patrick McCann, who is chair of the City of London Law Society Training Committee, and he's been a major driving force behind this scheme. We've got Dr. Jessica Guth, a legal academic at Leeds Beckett University, and we've got Nathan FitzPatrick, Learning and Transformation Lead at Law Centres Network. Young legal aid lawyers have been involved in and concerned about the introduction of the SQA since its inception. We've been encouraged by the talk on lowering costs and improving social mobility and diversity, and crestfallen when this is not quite how things turned out. We've been extremely concerned by the impact the very limited areas of law covered by the SQA will have on our ability as a sector to recruit new solicitors into the sector, and the way this will affect recruitment and succession, which, as we know, is already in crisis. We continue to have these concerns and will continue to lobby for improvement in these areas. However, we've also recognised the potential benefits of the new flexible ways candidates can prepare to take the SQA and can complete qualifying work experience in a move away from the traditional training contract route, and we felt that there were avenues available where we could find ways to benefit our sector despite all of the continuing issues. Myself, Patrick, and Victoria Cromwell from Barbary attended an FRA panel discussion on the SQA in February this year. Sorry. I raised many questions. Yeah, feels like longer. I raised many questions about the impact on social mobility during the event and the impact of the SQA on social welfare law. And Patrick noticed this and asked me to meet with him and Victoria after. They had a germ of an idea about a scheme which may help our sector benefit from the SQA. And from there, the Social Welfare Solicitors Qualifying Fund grew. The scheme will allow those who wish to be solicitors but who are trapped as paralegals, caseworkers or advisors because they cannot afford the still prohibitive cost of qualification to qualify under the SQA for free, using their own employment as qualifying work experience with the support of their employer, and by funding the SQE prep course at Barbary and SQE 1 and 2 exams for them, free for the aspiring solicitor and for the firm employee. We've been able to encourage a legal sector-wide coalition of people to agree that this would be a good thing. And as a result, we've now obtained, I believe, £155,000 from 13 city firms and the City of London Law Society's charitable arm to fund 16 people through the Solicitors Qualifying exam. We think this is an amazing opportunity to improve access to the profession for those currently excluded, and as a result, improve access to justice and sustainability into the future. And we hope that you will agree. And we hope even more that some of you here will apply and benefit from the scheme in the coming months. So Patrick is going to talk to us about his perspective, the city perspective on this scheme, as well as give us some more detail about the application process and speak on behalf of Barbary about the prep course on offer as part of the scheme. And if you've got any questions, just put them in the Q&A or chat function and we're going to come to them all and have a discussion at the end. So over to you, Patrick.
Thank you so much, Siobhan. So just to introduce myself, I chair the City of London Law Society Training Committee. I'm also a director of learning with I'm also Director of Learning with Linklaters, which is a big, ugly and dare I say it, rich law firm in the city. I'm hoping that you can see these slides. I'm having just a few problems. Yeah, great. And I've been pleased to be working on this project for well over a year now, and I'm really pleased that we've managed to launch the project earlier this week on Monday, in fact. And I'm here to tell you about it and also how it works, and also how the bit with Barbary works as well. So I want to, before I go further, call out Emily McFadden, Siobhan as well, and Anila, who's on the call, who have really helped this through from a Young Legal Aid Lawyers group, and also Victoria Cromwell from Barbary, who's not able to be here today. So in essence, what we're trying to do here is get funding from big, rich city law firms to allow young legal aid lawyers to take part in Barbry's SQE preparation courses, and then to take the SQE assessments that are provided by Kaplan, and we aim to cover the costs of those. So CLLS will front it, and we will then make sure that whoever qualifies for the programme is paid for. There is links to some launch comms at the bottom of these slides, which you will get. I will go fairly quickly, but the slides will come to you, and you can see that this is getting a fair amount of traction now. Now, I've been on LinkedIn not very much, and I'm not particularly active on it, but I posted something on Monday, and today, this afternoon, I had 6,500 views, which is fairly impressive. YLAL tweeted about it, I think on Monday as well, and I think they've had well over 40,000 impressions on that. So that's really great. It is now getting quite a lot of activity, and is being noticed not only by the city, but also by people that we would hope would benefit from this programme. So what are we trying to do? The essence of it is the issue that we see, as explained to us by Siobhan and Emily, and I should explain that much earlier in my career, I did a short stint in a North London law firm, high street firm, where I did some legal aid work as well. So I have some insight, but nothing that's current, and certainly not enough. But the issue, as I understand it, is if there isn't enough access to justice for vulnerable low-income clients who need to get legal advice, and there's massive underfunding thanks to Priti Patel and her cabal, and as a result of that, we are not having enough young social welfare lawyers coming into the profession. And by young, I mean people at the early end of their solicitor career, not necessarily young by age. So we are not getting people as solicitors, as early solicitors coming through. So our solution is we're going to try and create those social welfare solicitors by the funding of the SQE course and exam. And we are primarily aiming at people who are already working in the social welfare legal sector. So we could imagine those to be paralegals, caseworkers, police station attendants, etc. That's who we're primarily going for. It could also include people that are in receipt of a training contract and are working, but haven't yet done the SQE exams. And this is a joint venture by CLLS, Barbary, and the Young Legal Aid Lawyers. And as we mentioned, there are 14 funding people attached, organisations attached. So what we hope is that this fund will fix this need for early solicitors, that we will address the qualification barriers as we very much understand them in your sector. As you know, I've come out of getting some sort of degree or degree equivalent. I'm not earning very much money, and I really can't afford to pay for these exams. I certainly can't afford to take any time off work, and my employer also can't afford these exams either. And we hope that that will help to reduce pressure on supervising solicitors, and also for those of you who will become early solicitors, that you'll have a sort of a consistency of competence and confidence and client service through this educative facility. So what we're aiming for is that the fund will be available to successful applicants currently working in or contracted to work in social welfare law, working for organisations that serve this disadvantaged communities. And we hope that what it will mean is that your qualification will increase in both the responsibility, both the range and responsibility of care that you'll be able to provide to your clients. And it should, we hope, level up representation to at least some degree against the other side as you might come across them. So that's the sort of the overall plan. And why has this become available? As Siobhan was mentioning, the SQE does one thing, two things maybe, that I think are really helpful for this particular scheme. So first of all, the cost of qualification, course and assessment fees has been reduced, not to any levels that a social welfare lawyer will be able to self-fund, but certainly to a level that we can persuade city law firms to fund a little more readily. Also, the courses that are now emerging are part-time, online, and could be attracted to full-time workers. So we see that we can get people to study in the evenings and weekends and get through the course that way. And also the biggest thing is that the SQE will no longer require a formal training contract. Previously, those used to be, you have to get an employer to employ you for 2 years, rotate you through 4 seats, lots and lots and lots of paperwork. The qualifying work experience that you'll have to evidence, the bar for that is much lower than it was previously, we think. It is also, I think, worth bearing in mind that what this programme will not do is qualify you to be brilliant at social welfare law, because there isn't a social welfare law element to it. It is, I would say, broadly classified as a high street qualification. So it's stuff that goes across society, but not really social welfare law. So there's no specialism part of this particular exam. I'll talk that through in a little while. And we see this programme being unique in the market because what it does is it provides a lot of access to justice by converting social welfare lawyers to solicitors who are working full-time. You know, you're going to get a lot of full-time advisors working at solicitor level. The cost is less than it used to be, so we therefore think more people will be able to do it. And then the other thing we think is there will likely be a social mobility aspect to this. A number of you might have come from backgrounds that weren't fantastically wealthy, and you won't, I imagine, be earning huge amounts of money as well. So it'll deliver on both of those counts. But our main aim is to help to deliver access to justice through society. Now, this slide is really, really complicated, and I'm not asking you to look at it in huge detail, but this shows the sort of the flow. So law firms will pay into a fund. That fund will then pay the law school and the assessment provider. We've managed to negotiate a couple of discounts, and we hope that if we can get our fund up to 200,000, that we should be able to get 22 people through the programme. We are at about 78% of that target at the moment, so I'm relatively confident that we'll hit that come the new year. We think there are at least 200 people that could qualify for this programme. We expect to get those applications in by mid-January, and a whole group of assessors will then go through those, and we think we'll try and sift down to round about 50% more candidates than we have places for. So if we have 22 places, we think there'll be 35 candidates. So we think the market value for each of these places is about £10,000, whilst still allowing you to work full-time. I know it's a real strain, and it will be a real strain getting through this programme. So what are the advantages for you as social welfare lawyers? Well, we think it begins to address qualification barriers of debt and to some degree low wages. We would hope that once you qualify as solicitors, you might be able to increase your wages, and also the range and depth of work that you're able to do as a solicitor through family, legal aid, contracted work, housing, county court, etc. should increase, and we would hope that requirements for supervision by solicitors will reduce as well. And what we also really very much hope is that we'll encourage you to stay in the sector, those of you working as social welfare workers, and also we hope that it'll alleviate some of your financial worries and also reduce stress that you might feel through delivering legal services and not having a solicitor qualification behind you. We've got a bunch of worthy and important people who are saying nice things about this. Most recently, Ellie Reeves, who was until the weekend Shadow Solicitor General, wrote this quote for us. So an excellent initiative that will help aspiring solicitors from all backgrounds to qualify as social welfare lawyers. You know, the legal aid sector since LASPO has been on its knees, and this requires urgent action by the government. But anything that will increase the number of qualified solicitors from diverse backgrounds will help, and which will help vulnerable people access legal justice is most welcome. As you might be aware, Ellie Reeves was shuffled out of that position at the weekend and has been replaced by Andy Slaughter, who has also put his name to this particular quote. We will update that before we send you this slide deck. So a bunch of people are thinking this is a good thing. One of the partners at my firm, Dame Alison Saunders, who used to be Director of Public Prosecutions before she joined us, also talks about how important it is, and it being a fundamental part of you know, having a decent legal system. So how will the programme work for you? We aim to make our awards around about March time, and we would ask you to start on the programme from April of this year. SQE1 is the first part. That's a 40-week preparation course, and the expectation is that you'll study for around about 10 study hours per week. Some of you, it might be faster, some of you, it might be a little bit slower, and then you'll take the exam around about January of 2023. You'll then start your SQE prep after a short break. That runs about three months, again about 10 hours a week, and then you will take the exams come June or July of 2023. These dates are a little bit movable because the SRA is moving them a little bit. And what we would hope that you would be doing alongside that is building up your portfolio of qualifying work experience in order that your firm, your organisation can sign that off, and you could then apply for admission sometime in late 2023, early 2024. So how's Barbary going to run this programme for you? I'm here in place of Victoria. So here's the stuff about the exam. I know that there's an SQE hub on the Young Legal Aid Lawyers website. I'd really recommend that you look there and also look at the SRA website, because it's interesting and important that you know what's going on. So this is, as we say, a new stage of qualifying. There's two-stage exam assessment, and it is the exam assessment which is the most important thing as far as your sign-off and entry into the solicitor's profession is concerned. First bit, mixed subject multiple choice. Second bit is a legal skills assessment. And important for you to know, this is available for law and non-law graduates as well. So same for both. You do need to have a degree or a degree equivalent to qualify at the end. Lots of information on the SQE. So let's run you through that. You'll do SQE1, SQE2, you'll have your qualifying work experience, and then you'll need to have your character and suitability requirements signed off as well. So let's have a look at the SQE1 exam. Ignore the pound signs, we've negotiated better deals on that. So this will test your functional legal knowledge as a broad equivalent. See it as your driving theory exam. Mixed subject multiple choice. You'll have 360 questions over 13 hours. Each of those questions will have 5 answers. You have to select the single best answer. It'll be done on a computer, COVID allowing, in a study hall, and you will have 1 minute and 48 seconds to answer each of those 360 questions. It runs through a whole wide area of law, and broadly it's equivalent to a law degree plus part of the LPC, the legal practice course, as was, plus some more on ethics. So that's sort of how the programme will run in terms of your assessment. Part 2, see this as your driving practical exam, will be a legal skills assessment where you will be tested across a variety of different skills. You'll be tested across skills and also the legal knowledge underneath them. 5 skills: interviewing clients, advocacy, case and matter analysis, research, writing and drafting, and the production of an attendance note. We would hope that a lot of the work that you'll be doing and have been doing will help you with the SQE2 part of the exam, but you will need prep in order to get through this. So how does Barbary practice this? Maybe important to say that the SQE is built on the US Bar Council exams, and Barbary is the foremost provider of courses to get people through that. They have qualified 1 million attorneys over in America, and so that's one of the reasons we're working with them. So what will Barbary do for you? It puts together a personal study plan. It has a really amazing learning management system which will check your learning, which will help you, which will get you to redo things if you're having some challenges with them. You'll have a study assistant and coach. You'll also have a mentor who will be a former lawyer. You'll have some really great tutors and lectures to watch. And, as I mentioned, Barbary really understand how to pass multiple choice exams because they've been doing it for 40, 50 years. And as I say, 1 million attorneys have qualified through their process. And you will get hard copy resource books. I know that was one of the questions that was brought up earlier. And you'll get Prep for Success workshops as well. So what we hope that will mean is that you'll have help with motivation, with advice, with which direction to take as your mentor, with coaching, with support, and also how you can achieve your goals and get to your success. So, a really good opportunity to have someone who's been a solicitor, but is also very well versed in educative practices to help you through that process. So what's the eligibility criteria? How does the application work? So as I've alluded to, on the candidate side, we need you to have a degree or equivalent. We need you to be working or awarded a training contract, and at least 70% of your work needs to be in social welfare, and that's defined in the paperwork. And we ask you to confirm that you're committed to qualifying as a social welfare solicitor and that you intend to stay in social welfare law for 2 or more years after qualification. And we have some salary caps as well. So 25,000 outside London, 30,000 in London, and we ask you to confirm that you don't have savings of more than 15,000. And we do that to exclude people who are being very well paid or who aren't doing social welfare work. And then we ask your employer to confirm your application. So the information that you have, we'll ask for that on letterhead. And we also ask them to confirm that you're capable of passing SQE at first sitting and that you will make an excellent social welfare solicitor, and that they will have the opportunity to undertake, and that they will confirm your qualifying work experience, and that they anticipate employing you as a solicitor post-qualification. So that's the application. I would hope that a number of you would qualify for that. I see little flex for putting people through that don't meet those, but apply and we'll have a look. And then the application timetable opened on Monday. We need the applications by, I think it's Monday or Tuesday, the 17th of January. We will then look through those applications for 2 to 3 weeks. We will notify you early February. We will interview late February, and we hope to make our awards in early March for an April start. There are loads of application form and supporting documents on the CLLS website. What I would ask is that you work through all those documents before you start submitting your documents, and there's more guidance about that on the website itself. So this is who's funded so far. These are all very rich, very big, very scary law firms, plus the City of London Solicitors Company charitable fund. As Siobhan was mentioning, we think we've got enough for 16 candidates. I aim to get some more, so I would hope that come January we'll have enough for 20 candidates. I am meeting with various law firms, as is Siobhan, including tomorrow, over the next few days, and we are hearing some good noises, so I hope that we'll get some more. There's a bit of a quid pro quo. What we are saying to our law firms is that you will be delivering social welfare work, and we've done some calculations. We think that if we get 16 people through in the first year post qualification, if those people work 70% of a 40-hour week, we think that will total nearly 20,000 hours. If you're actually working more or less full-time as a social welfare lawyer, we think that will be 24,000 hours of social welfare legal advice given at solicitor level, which will be new and I think really interesting. Those numbers obviously increase the more people we have that we can get funding for. So we've done all the stuff that we need to do: first funding, getting the press com done, building our assessment process, launching, and we are now actively inviting applications. We will work on our assessments as we go through and aim to make those awards come March time. There is a load of information both on the YLAL and the CLLS websites, and I very much encourage you to look very, very closely at those and get your employers involved at an early stage. So I hope that's given you a bit of an idea. This is new in the market. It will rely on quality candidates coming through, so please do apply. So I'm going to, I hope, stop sharing now and hand back to my colleagues.
Thanks so much, Patrick. That was amazing to get through all that in the time you had. So well done.
We worked quickly. We worked quickly in the city.
You did really well. So I know that was absolutely loads of information, and we're going to, as I say, have time at the end for us to go through some questions that you're all coming up with as you're listening. And again, as Patrick said, we've got the YLAL SQE hub on our website, which has got loads of detail and links to the CLLS website as well in the application process. So now we are going to hear from Dr. Jess Guth. She's going to talk to us about the SQE more generally and legal education more widely. Thanks, Jess.
Thank you very much, Siobhan. And thanks for inviting me. It's an absolute pleasure to be on the panel. It's fantastic. So I've been leading on the SQE alongside Siobhan, but from a slightly different perspective for a number of years now, and we kept bumping into each other at the various events and standing outside and having a good moan about how things were going, and then going back in and trying to fight the good fight. So if you've read the summary of the chat that I had with Anila a little while ago on the website, if you even maybe have read some of the stuff I've written, you'll have a sense that I'm not a massive fan of the SQE. and I'm not. I think it's educationally nonsense. I don't think it makes a huge amount of sense to qualify solicitors. I don't think overall it's going to do what people think it's going to do. But having said that, I'm also realistic and pragmatic, and we're here. It's the SQE is here. So I think the challenge is now to make the most of that. And I was really excited when I heard about this fund, really excited, because actually it addresses some of the issues that the SRA should have been addressing by introducing the SQE and just missed completely, I think. So I'm kind of saddened that we need the fund, but really excited that we've got it, I think is the position that I want to take. And it also gives me hope. And I think hope is something that we really need in legal education at the minute. So I'm not going to go over sort of what is the SQE, how does it work in detail, because I think Patrick has given you a flavour of that, and I'm happy to answer questions if anybody has questions. But also I don't want to bore you to tears if you already know this stuff, so I'm not going to go over that. But I think I want to outline a number of challenges that I think we face in universities because of the introduction of the SQE. And one of those has been a real drive to kind of try and sell our undergraduate law degrees as things that prepare you for the SQE. And I find that quite disheartening, because if you look at the SQE, I'm going to disagree with Patrick slightly. Patrick said it's a high street kind of qualification. It cuts across society. And I thought, is that true? I don't think about it in that way, because if I think high street, I think employment law, I think family law. It's not there. It's not on the SQE. So when I look at the SQE curriculum overall, I think, that looks like rich man's law to me. There's no normal people law in there. So, you know, one of the challenges for me as a head of a law school, as somebody who's really active in the legal education community, is to resist that push to SQE rise undergraduate law degrees. I want to keep the SQE as far away from undergraduate law degrees as possible, because I think the SQE has the potential to suck the fun, the life-changing and the world-changing potential out of law. And if SQE is the way to qualify as a solicitor, then I would really like people who are heading for that route to have a really good grounding in the potential of what law can actually do. Because, you know, we study law to change the world, right? To help people, to make a difference. And if we're trying to teach our students how to pass multiple choice exams, then we are not teaching them how to change the world. So for me, the really big challenge is to say no to SQE and to actually be really explicit about that. What an undergraduate law degree is for is learning about law. It's not learning the law in the way that you have to learn it for the SQE. It's learning about law. And I think that distinction is really important. And so for me, the challenge are engaging students, particularly students who are interested in social welfare law. Because actually there are so many degree programs where students look at that and go, I don't see myself here. I want to be a social welfare lawyer. Where is all this stuff in the curriculum? And actually, sometimes I think my advice to those students should be go study politics or history or, you know, something else instead, because actually that will serve you better. And I think that is such a shame, because law is an amazing subject to study if you get it right and you go to the right place for you. But the first challenge is engagement for me. How can I convince potential social welfare lawyers that a law degree is something that will serve them well, something that they can enjoy, something within which they can thrive? And I think that's hard. The second thing then, as a legal educator, is to think about, you know, let's be realistic. People study law degrees because they want to be lawyers. And even though you don't have to, I think that trend will continue. So how then do we not suck the joy and the fun out of studying law while still preparing them for the steps that come next? So how can we give them the skills to be successful in an SQE kind of context? Because actually, it's really hard. I don't know if anybody's ever tried to cram for a really hard multiple choice test, but it's actually not fun, and it takes a particular set of skills. So how do we build those skills and the confidence required to take that step without kind of sucking the fun out of everything else that they're doing. So how can we prepare students to be successful? And that's really hard, because the way to get good at multiple choice exams is to sit lots of multiple choice exams, but that's not compatible with the first part. So that's hard, I think. And the third challenge for me, which I think is also a really big challenge for you guys, is so we get students good at getting through the SQE. That's nice. So they're good at that, but they don't know anything about social welfare law. So what is the role for undergraduate degrees? What is the role for postgraduate degrees? What is the role for different types of SQE prep courses, for example, in making sure that we're not just churning out people who are very good at passing the SQE, but can actually do something with that legal knowledge, have a breadth of legal knowledge, but also the specialism actually that you guys need. How do we do that? And I think those are really big challenges for law schools. And I think I'm trying to address those challenges by focusing on, and people laugh at me because I just say, you know, what we do changes the world, it really matters. And that's where the focus has to be. So for me, students who come and study any kind of law degree that I'm involved in at whatever level it is, and I think that's true for colleagues, you know, across the sector who are working really hard on this, the first thing we have to do is get students excited about the transformational potential of law. Okay, we have to make them understand that law can be a really powerful tool to change their world, change the world that their clients operate in, that space. And if we do that again and again and again, then actually we're fundamentally changing the world. So it's little steps that amount to something really quite inspirational. That's my first job. My second job is opening their eyes to this notion that there is life beyond the SQE, and that the SQE does not define our discipline. It doesn't define what we do. It doesn't define how we teach about law. It is just a fairly idiotic multiple choice kind of thing that we have to pass. It's a hurdle. If we think about the SQE like that, it's actually much, much easier to deal with and think about and encourage students to get through. And then I think we need to remember that our students, the potential social welfare lawyers, come from all sorts of different backgrounds, need all sorts of different types of support. And, you know, the scheme is amazing because for some people that will be exactly what they need. And I'm going to give Birmingham City Uni a little plug here, because for some other students, what we do will be exactly what students need. For other students, some other institution will do exactly what they need. And I think as educators, we need to be braver in just saying, actually, do you know what? We don't do what everybody else does. We do this, and we think it's right for you because that's the really important thing. If we all do the same thing, then we're going to miss some amazing potential lawyers in whatever field, because we'll lose people who just don't think in that way, don't work in that way. And that would be a really, really big shame. So I'm going to finish where I started with it. It's an amazing scheme. I wish we didn't need it, but seeing as we do, well done, everybody. It's an amazing effort to get to this point, and I hope it does really well. And I'm going to hand over back to Siobhan, I think.
Thanks so much, Jess. Really appreciate your honesty. And I think what you said was really important about how important it is for people in social welfare law to have a really good grounding in what the law can do and how it can change the world. And I think that's why this scheme is important, and important to a real future generation of social welfare lawyers, because the people that it will benefit are the ones already doing the work, just not able to get the qualification that calls them a solicitor. So I think that is really important, and unfortunately it's one of the only ways you're going to get to really get that knowledge and experience of social welfare law at the moment, is to be actually working or volunteering in it. So yeah, it is sad, but as you say, this part of it is exciting, and it is, I suppose, using it for the positives that we can find in it, isn't it? So moving on now, we're going to hear from Nathan FitzPatrick, and he is, as I said, from the Law Centres Network. So he's going to give us a bit of a perspective on why organisations can benefit from this scheme and how it can be a positive thing for preparing for the future of social welfare law. Thanks, Nathan.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Siobhan. And thank you, Patrick and Jess, as well. It's been lovely to hear from you. And I just want to strongly agree with a huge amount of what you've just said, Jess. It's such an important, it's so important to keep the idea of why people are doing this, why people want to be social welfare lawyers, why we want to be lawyers at all. You know, one of the things that I think gets remarked on quite often is how everybody, when they start studying law, wants to change the world, wants to do human rights law, wants to do the work, and then it's you know, we go for lots of very, very valid reasons. You then go and do lots of different things, but the point is that that's what gets people excited about it, and that's what gets people excited about our profession is that very human instinct to help people. And one of the things I love about working with law centres is just how prevalent that is in the work that gets done all the time. You know, I think Birmingham City Uni, I think a lot of your students work in the Central England Law Clinic as well. So Central England Law Centre's Legal Welfare Benefits Advice Clinic, as well as some other opportunities. And I kind of want to come into that by talking about that. Actually, one of my previous jobs when I worked for Bristol Law Centre was recruiting volunteers to come and work with us on our welfare benefits advice project as well, which was known as LASP. Still is known as LASP. That is, it's actually one of the most sort of enriching jobs I've had, in that I got to recruit people from, exactly as I said, all different types of backgrounds, people who were, you know, usually but not exclusively doing undergraduate degrees, a couple of people on the LPC or the BPTC as well. Sorry, it's very acronym heavy, this presentation, isn't it? But lots of, so all these students who came with a variety of different skills, a variety of different histories. Some people who had known since they were, you know, 3 that they wanted to be a lawyer, and some people who had only just figured it out. And actually interviewing people and then getting them into a position where they could actually practice their practice, you know, go in and talk to people and represent them in welfare benefits tribunals was huge. And the amount of growth that I saw in lawyers doing the work that they'd always wanted to do, young lawyers doing the work they'd always wanted to do before they became solicitors, was great. And it's things like that make me feel quite positive about the SQE, in the way that there are these opportunities for people who have found a place to do the work they want to do, but then have hit the stumbling block of, now how do I go back and become a solicitor? How do I get to the next level of the representation I know I now need to provide for my clients? That's tough. So what I wanted to talk about from the Law Centre's point of view, I should probably explain a little bit. So I work for Law Centres Network, which is the umbrella organisation. We represent the views and the needs of law centres, of the 41, over 40 different law centres around the country, who provide legal advice to people who are the most vulnerable in their communities and need it the most. You know, if you want to talk about social welfare law, one of the reasons that LCN and I have been involved in this for a little while now is not only because Siobhan is one of our fantastic solicitors in the Law Centres movement, but because that is exactly where we hope a lot of the applicants for this scheme are going to come from, is law centres. They are people who are working as caseworkers, as legal caseworkers, whether that's in immigration or employment, discrimination, welfare benefits, housing, all sorts of different areas across the country in the most vulnerable communities, often coming from the most vulnerable communities, working to try and make things better. And one of my real hopes is that the SQE, and the way that it is, exactly as has been said already, it is a door that you have to go through. It's not the same as deciding that you want to spend 3 years studying and going and doing an undergraduate degree. It's, for the people I'm representing in this, it's a door that you have to go through in order to do the next part of complexity of work that you want to do. It's a gateway, and that's why, just to echo the words that have been said, I don't love that this fund was needed. You know, in an ideal world, social welfare law would be treated with so much more respect than it is treated. across the legal profession, across politics, across the country, it would be funded. We wouldn't have to worry about funding. Let's just leave it at that for the moment. But we do. And the fact that in such a, although I know it feels like a decade that you've all been working on this, in such a short amount of time, you've managed to put together a fund that noticed a problem that we had in our sector, evidenced it, decided on what the solution would be, and then put it into practice is I'm, you know, where I'm wearing a hat, I take it off. I really, really am very, very impressed with the work that's been done, and very, very hopeful about what it'll mean, not only for the young caseworkers, and I use young in the terms of experience, but the caseworkers across our network, but also for the law centres themselves. So one of the problems that we have very much identified, and I've been trying to work on over the past year and a bit that I've been with LCN, is the recruitment, retention, and sort of opportunities side of things for our law centres. I don't need to go into the whole history of the cuts to legal aid and LASPO and all of that sort of dark history over the past sort of 10 years almost, but it has left huge gaps in social welfare provision, in that it becomes very, very hard to do the work to start with. But there's a secondary effect, which is that you then lose the skills and the specialism within your sector. Once it's hard to pay for a type of work, then it's much harder to train someone to take over from the person who was doing it, even if you can keep holding on to the person who was doing it 10 years ago. We've definitely noticed that in the law centres network, and there are law centres that have closed over the past decade. There are law centres that have had to stop doing certain legal aid contracts. There are law centres that have had to wind down certain areas of work that they just couldn't fund anymore. That's the sad bit. The exciting bit is there's lots of people who want to do that work. There's an awful lot of people who care about it, and there are places that are willing to fund it to an extent, and we are working on that and building up more provision where we can, and identifying need, and there are some amazing projects going on across law centres. If I start talking about them, I'll never stop. But what we're hoping with this fund is that what it'll allow is for more of that solicitor capacity to grow in law centres, areas that have been able to perhaps recruit one solicitor or a supervisory solicitor, but who can't upskill people to take over that or to move into that area. We'll hopefully be able to identify the homegrown talent that is already there in the law centre, and actually be able to help those people to qualify and to be the next generation of that work. I'm excited for the possibility of there being more community care provision in law centres, of us having more ability to do more discrimination work across the country, of even the work that is already being done but isn't taken into account often by the seats that you have to do as part of a training contract, actually having more value in the SQE regime, and solicitors being able to sign off, for example, welfare benefit, tribunal representation, and that sort of work that is qualified, is difficult legal work that gets done, but currently is very difficult to justify as a seat within the training contract. I'm aware I've kept on talking for a little while now, and I'd love to talk more, so please do ask any questions if you do. But that's my sort of optimistic hope for the future of the way that we'll be able to get some of the fantastic people who are working in social welfare law, not limited to law centres, but obviously they're the ones I know most about, to jump through that hoop and become solicitors who are going to be able to do some really, really important and impactful work in the future. Thanks, Siobhan.
Thanks so much, Nathan. Yeah, it's been really positive working on this scheme. One of the things you said there was that we as a sector need to be treated with more respect, and that's absolutely true. I mean, we all know what the press, what the politicians in government at the moment, what they say about us as legal aid lawyers, as social welfare lawyers, and it does sometimes feel like you're being attacked on all sides. So I think one of the things that has been positive is this kind of cross-sector approach that we've been able to have with this scheme. So obviously we've had a lot of support from you guys at Law Centres Network, from Legal Aid Practitioners Group, the Legal Education Foundation. You kind of saw the need for it and came on board quite quickly. But then it's been harder for us to convince the city of why we need this and why specifically we have to be solicitors for certain things, and why even social welfare law requires expertise and better pay and, you know, years of experience. And so it's been really lovely to see, after, you know, Patrick and I and Victoria and Emily hammering away at it, going, preparing more and more statements and presentations and attending meetings, and how much they've come around to it and how much support we're seeing for it now. And obviously we're seeing kind of quotes of support from politicians, MPs, mainly Labour, but even so. And then the Law Society and organisations like that showing their support. You know, it does feel like this kind of cross-sector work can help to improve that respect that people more generally have, and that the view of our work is not just that we're having money thrown at us to help terrible people stay out of jail, which is all you see in the gutter press at times. So yeah, it's been one of the big positives for me, has been that kind of understanding across the sector and being able to make that case time and again. So thanks so much, Nathan. So as I've said a few times, we're now going to go to the questions. I've seen quite a lot of questions coming through.
And I've been beavering away and trying to answer some of them.
You've answered them all, Patrick. So what are we going to talk about now?
Sorry,
I'm not go home.
You have worked with me and you know how hyper I am, but I still think they're worth talking about, but I just can't resist.
Oh, you're so funny. Okay, right. Let's go through. Wow, that's a really big one.
Now, I might have got some of the answers wrong, but you know, I do quite fast. Should we go to the open one, because that one I haven't answered?
Got a hand up as well, Siobhan.
Oh, okay, fab. Right, we'll do this open one and then we'll go to the handle. Is the scheme available to those who are exempt to give SQE1 and have to appear only for SQE2, the QLTS transition arrangement? So
yeah, and I would say yes.
Yeah.
As
long as you fulfil all the other eligibility, it will be, won't it? Yeah,
I would have thought so. And look, you know, maybe that makes you even more attractive because you cost half as much. So yes, look, I think what I'd really like to get across is what we're trying to do here is make it easier for people already dedicated to social welfare legal services provision to become solicitors, using, and we have to use the new SQE route. That's the thing that we have to use. And as long as you're in that sort of field, then I think, you know, you would be eligible. So if you only have to do, if you're right that you only have to do SQE2, then I would say yes. It's more difficult if you're doing other courses or if you're not in full-time employment, etc. But let's have a look at some of those questions. Is that right? And Nathan, you'll know. Look, I know the course and I know the SQE and I know the SRA, but what I don't know is social, you know, welfare legal services provision, and some of those I think I might have overreached on.
So there's a question from Taylor. I think we had an email conversation earlier today where your question was that you're doing 2 days a week as a caseworker and 3 days a week on a different project that's not specifically legal advice work. But by the time you start the course, you will be, sit the exam. You would. So basically, in order to be able to qualify to be eligible, you need to be, at the time that you're applying, be able to say that you're working on 70% of your workload is full-time, or, well, it doesn't have to be full-time, it can be part-time, but the intention is that you will be able to build 2 years full-time equivalent by the end of the preparatory courses and by the end of the SQE2, so that you can qualify. So it's really important, as well as looking at our eligibility, to look at the SQE information to check how qualifying work experience works. That's not our rules, that's the rules of the SRA, and that applies across the board. So our rule is that you're already working within social welfare law and that you're committed to staying in social welfare law in your role, and your employer is also intending that, as long as nothing goes terribly wrong with the business or whatever their intention is, that they will employ you for 2 years as a solicitor after you complete this scheme. The requirement is that you're doing 70% of your work on social welfare law. That's basically so that you're not kind of doing a couple of hours, 10% of your work on social welfare law and the other 80 on like corporate law or something. You know, that's not what the scheme is aimed at. So if at the time that you're applying for the course, you are doing 70% of your work and you believe that by the time that you finish the SQE2 exams, you will have that 2 years qualified work experience as it's defined by the SRA, then you should apply and you will hopefully be eligible.
The one thing I'd add on that, if it's okay, is just, I mean,
yeah,
working at a citizen's advice, I mean, I would expect that I don't know, Taylor, I apologize, but that the other 3 days are something vaguely social welfare-y, even if they don't specifically
exactly
fit into the what you'd sort of understand as like the legal aid categories. You have to remember this definitely goes beyond the legal aid categories. I guess my advice on that would be apply and have that conversation. I think is the simplest thing. Also, and I don't know the answer to this, I just want to say to start with, but it would probably be worth looking back on the exactly as Siobhan just said, the SQE guidelines, and look how far you can backdate your work to show that 2 years qualifying work experience. I don't know the answer to that. I don't
yes, so a lot you can, you know,
right.
almost indefinitely. Your challenge will be being able to get a solicitor in your organisation to say, I remember that work that you did 10 years ago.
Yeah,
exactly.
And that was qualifying work experience. But I just go on, you go, Siobhan.
No,
I think I'd add two things. The bar for qualifying work experience is pretty low. Look, you can't be a receptionist in a law centre doing nothing to do with legal services and claim. But if you're doing casework, document preparation, interviewing, processing of forms, etc., I think you can get some of the way there. And what the SRA's view is very much that the thing that tests you as being solicitor quality is the SQE1 and the SQE2, and they're slightly less bothered about the qualifying work experience. But then I think the other thing I have to say, you know, sort of on behalf of the CLLS, is I'm under a bit of an ethical duty here, because what I've said to the city is these people will deliver social welfare solicitor legal services in 2 years. And so what we're concerned to know is that you will be doing that work, that your employer will employ you to do that work, that is the sort of work that you're doing. And if I don't know that you're doing social welfare work, or you're not planning to stay around, or that your employer sees no realistic possibility of you delivering social welfare solicitor work, it becomes a bit more difficult.
So that's there's two parts to it. That the fact that you are already doing some kind of legal work experience that your employer is going to be willing to say is helping you develop towards the competencies required of a qualified solicitor. But you also have to be within an organisation where there's a solicitor or a COLP who can sign off your work and say that you have done that. So if you're giving advice in an advice organisation, but there are no solicitors and there's no COLP, then you're not going to be able to get it signed off to the standard that the SRA needs it signed off to. So although advice work is going to be covered by this and will work if you're a caseworker, advice worker, paralegal, with a solicitor supervising, or within your organisation you can sign off on what you've done, that's going to be fine. But it's not if you haven't got that level of supervision that's a solicitor or a COLP who can sign off. And that's because that's how the SQE works, and that's how the SRA have written the regulations. That's not because of our scheme. But as Patrick said, the important thing for us, this scheme, is that both you and the employer are committed to you working as a solicitor once you've qualified for 2 years within social welfare law.
That might be a good place to come on to one of the ones that's just been asked, which is how does the requirement to do the 2 years PQE work from an employment law perspective? I mean, the simple answer is we're not your employers. So it's essentially a contract to receive funding to study. It's actually not linked in with your employment contract. This isn't money that goes directly, well, it doesn't go at all to your employer, and it's not money that your employer does to you. It's just that you need the sign off of your employer in order to qualify. So I think that's the simple answer to that. I don't know if anyone would like to add anything.
Yeah, go on, Siobhan.
Patrick.
I think what I would say is, we're not asking for a guarantee that you're going to be employed as a solicitor, but what we do want your employer to say is, we anticipate that this will happen. What I can't have is a an employer saying absolutely no way do we want to keep this person on, or once they qualify we want them to do some high net worth individual tax fund structuring work via the Cayman Islands, which is sort of what my fund does. That's not what this fund is for.
Exactly.
Although that's
And
an interesting idea on how to fund law centres in the future, but we'll have to come back to that one. Just have one solicitor doing high net worth Cayman Island transactions and then all the rest of them doing... Sorry, no, that's...
Well, it is. Let's explore.
I think the truth is that there is concern from candidates and employers about whether, what does this require of them? And other than what we've just said about having to agree that you're already doing the work and that you'll continue to do the work, that is really all that it'll do. It's just the same now under the old system of you're studying for the LPC part-time while you're doing your job. It's got nothing to do with, they don't even interact together in our area of law. Like obviously city firms where Patrick's from, they're paying for your LPC and you're going through it how they want you to go through it. And that, the way I did it, for instance, part-time at night school whilst working full-time during the day, that's how it's going to be. We will be paying directly to Barbary, who will then pay to Kaplan for the exam fees. The employer and the candidate won't see any of the money, touch any of the money. And it's going to be between the candidate and the employer to agree, do you get a study day? How do you do the exam? Do you have to take annual leave or will they give you study leave? Any of that is between you and your employer. And it's kind of, that's it. There's nothing that you've got to sign that says, or the employer has to sign that says, we will definitely allow them to do this many days out of the office on the course. It's all supposed to be able to be done because it's so flexible and online around your working day. So really, what you need is to get them on board at the beginning to agree to the sign off of the letter and to agree that if you are able to qualify under the SQE, they will give you a paid role as a solicitor after that. Yeah, and we've also filmed a video. Myself and Carol Storer did a little video.
It's excellent. Excellent bit of role play.
We hope that will help employers understand that kind of perspective. So if you're worried about your employer because a lot of employers in our sector have no idea about the SQE because we're so busy, we have no time at all. It's so hard to keep up to date with these things. Obviously, the city has big departments that have been working on this for years and years and years. We don't. So the video basically is, if you feel like your employer might not really have any idea about the SQE or about this scheme, you can send that to them at the same time as asking if they can meet to discuss it, and it will hopefully answer some of those concerns that they might have.
Oh, and I've just noticed, Siobhan, that the question that was about employment law has come actually from an employer and not a employee. So I think your question was you'd love people to stay with you post qualification for 2 years. So I think a couple of things to say here. We will aim to check in with candidates as they go through this whole process. And we will release funds as they go through the process, provided they do what they need to do. So I need them to get through the application process, then be awarded. Then Barbary needs to say that they're studying and taking part on the course before we will fund the assessment. They need to pass the assessment before we will pay for the next course. Barbary needs to confirm that they're actually engaging. I think they're a standard before we then release the monies for SQE2. And then after that, we would want to keep talking to you every 6 months for the next 2 years to check that you're still working in social welfare law. Now, you might change employers, which doesn't help the person that asks the question, but if you start going outside of social welfare law, we would want to have a conversation with you, and there will be a clawback arrangement in place, which will mean if you leave within 2 years of qualification, we might want some of those funds to come back. We'll look very favourably if you go and work in another area of social welfare, social welfare services, fine. But if you come and join my firm to become a Cayman Islands tax-funded person, we're going to want you to get the money. We're going to want the money back, and that's something you'd negotiate with your next employer if that were to happen. And that will be on a slide.
David Hobart, I can't see participants list because I'm using my phone, but I've just been told your hand has been up. Do you want to come in?
Sorry, David.
Maybe he's left. David, are you able to speak?
I don't.
Oh no, maybe you can't. Oh.
I think better to put it in the. Oh, there we go. Yep, sorry. Someone behind the scenes has sorted.
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Excellent. No, actually, all my questions have been answered. I just wanted to give a shout out to Patrick and the team for working this lot through.
Thank you.
I think I get progressively more encouraged each time I hear Patrick go through his slide deck. But I was slightly concerned by how many thousand hits did you get, Patrick?
Well, I only got 5,500, but Siobhan and the YLAL got 38,000 impressions, which is similar, I think.
Yeah,
Very impressive.
It's getting close to Lady Gaga standards, is what we're
Yeah, it is. It's also getting close to nightmare standards. I just wondered if this is going to provide. I mean, on a serious note, presumably fairly soon you'll have some indication as to how this might translate into potential serious applications.
Yes, I think that's right. So
and that'll be one of those Jesus type moments.
Yeah,
when we really do know where we stand.
Siobhan, maybe if you speak about the YLAL survey that you carried out in the summer.
Yeah, so at the beginning of our kind of discussions with the city firms, when we were trying to show that there was a real need for this and there was a real market for it, YLAL did our own survey of our membership, basically putting a questionnaire together that dealt with whether those people would be actually eligible to apply for the scheme and would want to apply for the scheme if it existed. We had 200 responses that we felt could be eligible. Responses from people who were positive and said they would apply for the scheme, and also from what we could gather from the questionnaire would have met the eligibility. And that was from a survey that was open for a few days. So we have known that there is, there's definitely likely to be a lot higher demand than places available. And we're hoping that we're going to be, over the next few weeks, we're actually working on the sifting process, aren't we, Patrick? We're hoping to be able to use the question. We've got essay questions on the application that ask about commitment to social welfare law and things like that, that we're hoping with the scoring system we'll be able to sift through. We're going to have interviews as well to ensure that we're getting those candidates that are most committed to staying within the area as well.
I think that's right. And David, I think we will have more applicants than we have places, and it will be right. An outcome will be that people that do qualify won't unfortunately be awarded, and that I think is the nature of having what I consider to be a £2 million problem and maybe having £200,000. So we will work at trying to build up fund up over the next few years and try and get through those people. And if any of you know Priti Patel's phone number, please call her.
I'm interested in the reason I asked this question, of course, is I've got the Civil Justice Council forum tomorrow, which I know is still going ahead in reality as opposed to virtual, and I'm rather hoping that this topic may crop up as a subject of interest.
Yeah, we've one of my colleagues is attending tomorrow. Katie McFadden is attending to speak briefly at the morning plenary about it. So yeah,
I'll make contact with him then.
Brilliant.
That's it from me, Patrick.
Thank you so much for being on there, David.
My pleasure.
I didn't know David's my boss at the CLS. I didn't know he was on this call, and he just emailed me, and I was like, oh God, I would have been so scared. Anyway.
If only that was true about the boss bit, Patrick.
You know I'm terrified of you. Now, let's I've got the question from Oliver. Do you mind if I give this one a go?
That would be,
Oliver, yeah, please.
So you've started on the SQE1 with Barbary in summer 2021, and you've got no idea how you'll fund SQE2 commitments in the new year. Yeah, I think you should still apply. I don't know immediately the degree to which we will be able to backdate the the SQE1 payment, but you know, we will be supportive of you, and we will be as generous as we can be if you are the person that's selected to win the award. And I would hope that we would do something for you. So you should still apply.
Yeah.
I think just to underscore that, this is, you know, the SQE is very, very new, obviously, and this fund is even newer. So we're figuring out how it works. I think what's been put together in terms of the eligibility criteria and the expectations is excellent, but it is the first time that it's been done. So there is no precedent to, you know, specific precedent for this to be able to sort of go back and say, oh, well, in the past we've done this. So yeah, apply rather than don't, and then we'll know more next time.
Absolutely.
There's still quite a few open questions.
Yeah.
Should we deal with a couple of the easy ones quickly?
Yeah.
So we've got, this is a great step for the low salary, the rock and the hard place for aspiring legal aid lawyers. I've managed to save the money. Oh,
That's the one we've done.
That's done.
Sorry, it's the same question.
Let's have a look at this one.
I have been working in criminal defence as a paralegal for 8 months after graduating. I'll be continuing in this field too. Do I qualify? Could I also backdate this in terms of training? So yeah, that criminal defence work does qualify under social welfare under our definition. Absolutely. With the backdating of time is not kind of relevant. It doesn't matter how long you've already been doing it. The fact that you are employed and will continue to be employed, that matters most.
Was that about the qualifying work experience part?
Yeah, so the 8 months can go towards your qualifying work experience, but you're still not going to finish the SQE2 until you finish the SQE2. So it will definitely add up as part of it, and it backdates years and years and years, as Patrick said before. So I would suggest that anybody that's thinking about applying is already also talking to their employers about getting your qualifying work experience signed off as well, to make sure, you know, if you move departments or your supervising solicitor changes or anything like that, so that you've got it up to date for records of what work experience you've already done.
One of the things, sorry, just to really quickly put in, one of the things to sort of bring up with employers is they may have experience of what I believe still exists, but it's called equivalent means qualification. And there is actually a sort of, it's not the same by any means, but there is a comparison to be made in some ways in terms of, you know, having had that experience and putting it together as a sort of evidence of what you've done. So that, you know, that may help to sort of explain it to employers if you're having those conversations.
There are a couple of questions, one from Andrea and one as an anonymous attendee about completion of LPC. So if I answer the first one with Andrea, I think first of all, you should go to the SRA website and the SQE section in particular. You're asking whether if you've got an LLB, you can still do the LPC. I think the answer to that is yes. There's a transitional period of a number of years, but you won't get funding from this programme.
Oh, sorry, I can't see that question.
Yeah, so there was a question.
I think that was my fault because I just answered it on the
Yeah,
text and therefore it disappeared. Sorry about that.
Well, maybe if you do those ones, because I'll get into trouble. There's one about whether you need to do the SQE1 and if you've done
will I need to complete both SQE1 and SQE2, even though I've completed the LPC? So again, Patrick's right, you need to go to the SRA, but I think if you've already completed and passed the LPC, you still need to do SQE2 to qualify under that route, but you don't need to do SQE1. So I suppose, given what we've said about only wanting to do the SQE2, then you would still be eligible to apply as well.
Kate Bradley asked a question. So shall I read it and then we'll answer it? Is that all right for you, Siobhan?
That's fine, come on.
Great. So I'm working in a law centre, but I'm not doing casework or advice. Would I be able to apply for this fund? Does my organisation have to create a role that would be qualifying to access the funding if I were able to apply for it? Would they then need to interview more widely for that created role? So I think we can answer some of that, possibly not the last bit, which looks like an employment law question. Nathan, do you want to give it a go for the first bit? as you work in a law centre?
Of course. Hi, Kate. Lovely to hear from you. So yeah, I mean, essentially it would be quite difficult based on what I understand the role being at the moment, because of because that wouldn't be qualifying work experience as far as I understand it. So yeah, I mean that's the bit that particularly makes it difficult to be able to do this. I will say being doing the GDL or any other sort of training, it's up to you if you want to keep doing that kind of thing. Keep doing it, but it doesn't go towards, as far as I understand it, anything on the SQE. What it would do is set you up very well for lots of the bits that you do study on the SQE, or on the Barbary SQE preparation course. But yeah, I mean, the answer would really be to try and find a role in your organisation that would be able to give you that qualifying work experience and sort of show the fund that you were that you are doing social welfare law of some sort at the moment and intend to continue. Anyone, please feel free to correct me if I've missed anything on that.
No, I think that's great. I wonder whether it's worth me just coming in, because there've been a couple of questions that I think kind of touch on the same sort of thing, which is about, should I do the LPC or should I pursue the SQE route, and what's going to be best for me? And actually, I think that sort of depends on your circumstances. So, the LPC is still open, and actually will be open for at least in theory for quite a while. But you probably know more about this, but the rumours I'm hearing from practitioners is that actually they would prefer not to be running qualifying work experience and formal training contracts in parallel. So therefore, I think getting training contracts is just going to get harder and harder. So if you do the LPC and you want to follow that really traditional route, I think that is now an even bigger risk than it was before in terms of doing the LPC and then getting a training contract. And actually, I think particularly for legal aid work and social welfare work, actually, it is probably easier to build up that portfolio of work experience and qualify under the SQE route. I think that's going to be much easier and is actually going to set you up much better for that kind of career than doing an LPC, then trying to scrabble around for a training contract. Then, of course, you've got the kind of hybrid where you could do the LPC and then just do SQE too, but you're still going to be thinking about, well, how am I going to do the qualifying work experience bit? So I think there is no easy answer to which route is better. I think it completely depends on your circumstances, on what work experience you already have, what work experience you've got access to, actually whether there is a training contract on the horizon or not. So it's a really difficult question to answer without knowing very much about you and your individual circumstances. But I think it's just worth thinking about really carefully. And I think as time goes on, the LPC is actually going to be less and less attractive. Whatever the formal transition period is, I actually think that the bottom is going to fall out of the LPC market, perhaps sooner than some universities think, for example. I have no official figures, but my gut feeling is that actually we are not going to be running LPCs for as long as the SRA might think we will, because actually if we only have a handful of students, financially it makes no sense for universities to run them, so they're just going to disappear. So
I think
it's worth thinking about.
What we're hearing a lot feedback from the employer side is that they will be running informal training contracts, so they'll still expect you to do qualifying work experience for 2 years with them, no matter what you've already done before. But they're not looking for you to have the LPC and apply for a formal training contract in the old way. So you can do the SQE 1 and 2, go and work for them for 2 years and qualify then as a solicitor. So even those who are kind of clearly like the training contract route because they want to mold you into their organisation and that kind of thing, aren't happy to keep the LPC. So I think I do agree with what Jess has said there. Can I just bring in another question? So somebody, I think I've seen a couple of questions about the same thing, asking that they've done their LPC, been working in asylum work for the past 5 years and now working for a non-SRA firm as an UISC registered advisor. think that goes back to the question of if there is a supervising solicitor or COL at the organisation you work at that can sign off your qualifying work experience. And it's quite harsh to say that if there isn't, because obviously what you're doing is basically the same as a SRA regulated advisor, you know, because you're a senior caseworker, you're at a high level. But that is going to be the answer because of the SRA regulations, not because of the rules of the scheme. So it depends, that's what it hangs on for you, is whether there is that supervising solicitor or COLP or not at your organisation.
And then Kinzer, I think Jess will probably back me up on this. You don't need to do the SQE1 or the SQE2 if you've already got an LPC. Your route through is to get something that looks like a training contract. Now you can abandon the LPC and just go, okay, I'll try and get some qualifying work experience and then do this SQE route, which you could also do, and this fund would fund you through it. But it would be exactly as Siobhan said, you will need someone that can sign off your qualifying work experience. Now, I do understand apparently there is a bit of a black market appearing in terms of people who say they will sign off people with qualifying work experience, but you know, that has dodginess written all over it as far as I can see. So I don't know.
This is one of the issues. Sorry, Siobhan.
It's one of the major concerns that YLAL have had from the beginning. We've been raising this repeatedly, and because there's no official arbitrator or body that's in control of, you know, if that issue arises, what will happen is, it's going to cause a lot of issues, and we're worried about people taking advantage of people in that position.
And what we would be asking for is for your employer, when you apply, to confirm that they will be signing you off.
Exactly.
And I don't think we would accept if they said it's some other guy.
Exactly.
And just for the future as well, I mean, one of the benefits of working in an organisation that has some sort of that has a reputation, like a good reputation already, and then being able to go through this is being able to say at future interviews, you know, when the future, when they say, well, how did you, you know, where was your qualifying work experience with? You can say, well, it was with a law centre, or it was with ... You know, I'm just saying that. So, you know, we will definitely be as a network, building on and developing what it means to do qualifying work experience in a law centre, and so that, you know, that obviously what qualifying work experience is essentially it is a flexible training contract, but we're going to be looking into sort of what the standards are for the network to go through that, and we'll be you know, transparent about sharing that with all of the partners on this project as well, because I think that'll be a really interesting learning opportunity.
I'm just going to quickly answer Omalola's question, which is about whether the opportunity can be extended to an international postgrad student who has substantial part-time voluntary experience in their home country. So again, obviously the work experience you have will go towards your application and building on showing your commitment to the area of law, but if you're not currently employed in social welfare law in England or Wales, you're not going to be eligible to apply for the scheme, because it's completely focused on those people that are already working in the sector. So I can't see that we've got any other questions, so I'm going to finish with this quote that we've had from one of the attendees. They've said, "Thank you for setting this up. I run a small legal aid firm, and post-pandemic, I'm now at the point where financially I can barely afford to continue, let alone invest any more in trainees. You have given me some hope there might be a future." And I just think that was really lovely to hear, and it's exactly the kinds of thing. This isn't just about the candidates, it's about the future of the profession much more widely. So I think we should close on that. That's made me feel really happy to hear that it's having that impact on employers as well. So I just want to thank all of our speakers. It's been so good to hear from you all and all your different perspectives. And to everybody that is interested, either being an employer or a candidate for the scheme, if you go to the SQE hub on the YLAL website, there's links there to everything. You go link through to the City of London Law Society page, which hosts the eligibility criteria and the application forms and everything. And there's also links to the videos we've talked about, loads of loads of articles and blogs, including the interview with Jess that we mentioned earlier. And there's also a lot of information about the SQE, not just about this fund as well. So it's quite, if you're kind of early in your learning process about all of this, it's a good place to start to get up to speed. If you've got any questions that are specifically about your case or about whether you should apply to the scheme, please email us. We've got a dedicated email now, and it is ylalsqefund@gmail.com. I think we'll put it in the chat now. And send any questions through there that, you know, employers are welcome to email us there as well, and we can field through LAPG and Law Centres Network if we can't answer specifically. Yeah, thanks so much for coming, and I hope that that's all been useful for you.
Thank you so much, Siobhan.
Thank you.